So I live in Bristol, apologies for that. The area I used to live in Bristol was really one of the most ethnically diverse places I've ever lived in. If you know Bristol, it's in the city centre, an area called Lawrence Hill. And it was an ethnic majority, and the majority of the people living there weren't white British, they were from other backgrounds, a huge amount from Somalia. And just down the road from where I used to live, there was a mosque, a synagogue, a Hindu temple, a Sikh temple, all of which actually the Hindu and the Sikh temple were using what used to be church buildings. There was a Methodist church, a Catholic church, and several Anglican churches. It was not just ethnically diverse, but actually really religiously diverse as well. It was a really interesting place to live in. And I guess as you walk on Bath Uni campus, you see people from all different countries, all different parts of the world, all different backgrounds, all different religious backgrounds, of course. Bath University is an ethnically and religiously diverse place. And 100 years ago in Bath, if somebody was in the city centre of Bath and they said that Jesus was the only way to God, that wouldn't really be a particularly surprising thing for somebody to say, or a particularly unacceptable social thing for somebody to say 100 years ago in Bath. But now we live in the 21st century, and for somebody to say that Jesus is the only way to God, the way to God, that is seen by many people as intolerant and arrogant and exclusive. And what's interesting is that has always been the view of Christians, from the very first Christians to Christians today. And in fact, Jesus himself says in John's Gospel, in John chapter 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to God except through me, Jesus says. Jesus explicitly says that. And you know what? You may have some objections about that. That raises lots of questions for us, doesn't it? How can Christians say that they have the truth, the way to God, and all other religions are wrong? What about other religions? What about other faiths? How can people make exclusive truth claims when it comes to religion? That's what we're going to be thinking about for the next 15 to 20 minutes. Now, many people would say that one of the major barriers in the world for any meaningful or lasting peace is religion. Especially, people say, of the religions which tend to make exclusive truth claims, that think they're superior to other religions. And there's some kind of truth to that. How can we get on if one religion thinks that they're right and that therefore others are wrong? How can people get along if there's religion in the world? And in general, this is a bit of a generalization, but generally, religion tends to create a kind of slippery slope in people's hearts. Because each religion informs its own kind of adherents that they have the truth. And therefore, people who are not like them, who are not of their religion, don't have the truth. And it's easy for religious people to feel a bit smug and a bit arrogant about that. Religious people are often told that they get connected to God, they get right with God, by doing certain religious deeds, whether that's going to their religious place of worship or certain kind of special religious acts. That kind of gets them right with God. And it's easy, therefore, for religious people to kind of segregate themselves from other people who are not as kind of holy or pure as they are. Religious people tend to flock towards other religious people. And that can cause division. People say religion, therefore, highlights differences between people. Those differences can often lead to division and violence and strife. And all you have to do is look at places like Belfast to Baghdad, from Beirut to Bombay. Across the world, religion causes problems, people say. And Christianity is surely no different, because it's claiming to be an exclusive religion. If that is true, what can we do about that? If religion is a problem for us, what can we do? Well, there are a number of different things that people around the world have sought to do about the problem of religion. The first is we could outlaw religion. That's the first thing. We could just outlaw religion. If religion is bad, even things like Christianity and other religions which claim to be exclusive, if they're bad, we could just get rid of religion, or at least tightly control religion, couldn't we? And many places have tried to do that, from Soviet Russia to Nazi Germany, Communist China. Places have tried to clamp down on religion or forbid it totally. You don't have to be an expert historian to know that hasn't really led to lasting peace and tolerance. A chap called Alistair McGrath, quote should come up on the screen, who's a scholar, he wrote a book on the history of atheism. He said this, he said, the 20th century gave rise to one of the greatest and most distressing paradoxes of human history. That the greatest intolerance and violence of that century was practiced by those who believed that religion caused intolerance and violence. And the move against religion in the 20th century didn't really work. in another quote should come up on the screen. In 1966, a chap called Anthony Wallace, who was an anthropologist, he said, "The evolutionary future of religion is extinction," he said. "Belief in supernatural powers is doomed to die out all over the world as a result of increasing adequacy and diffusion of scientific knowledge. Science will mean religion, it becomes redundant. Is extinct," he said, in 1966. Now that hasn't happened, has it? It hasn't happened. Of course, I'm sure some people, there are less people going to church nowadays in this country, but across the world, Christianity and other religions are growing. 100 years ago, it was estimated that 1% of South Korea, 1% of Korea then, was Christian, 1% Christian. 100 years later, 40% Christian. There are estimated 100 million Christians in China alone, nearly 1 in 10. And even in the West, even at top academic universities like Bath, the Christian unions are often one of the biggest societies. Even at top academic universities. Religion hasn't died out, it's not going away. The move to outlaw religion hasn't really worked. But there's another option. Some people could think, well, maybe we could just condemn religion. We don't want to outlaw it. This is the 21st century. We don't want to just kind of forbid it. We can condemn it and use argument and reason and education to convince people that actually maybe religion isn't a great idea. That's a much more popular view today in the 21st century. Can't we use education and reason to just to show religious people that actually each religion is surely many equally valid ways to God? I think that's probably culturally where we are in the UK, certainly in many parts of the West, where there's an environment where it's basically outrageous or arrogant to make exclusive religious claims, even in personal, kind of private conversations that we have with people. So much so, one American journalist said this in Time magazine. He said, "It's an attribute of right-wing extremists to say that one religion is inferior to another." If you say that one religion is inferior to another, you're a right-wing extremist, according to this chap in Time magazine. It's really interesting, isn't it, when you think about that? That means that if you think that something like Judaism or Hinduism is a superior religion to one which encourages murder or child sacrifice, you're a right-wing extremist, he says. I think probably all of us would say there are some religions which encourage peace and harmony, which we want to say that that's good, we want to encourage that. Not to condemn any religion, because that would be a right-wing extremist. That's quite a hard view to take. But many people, other people, would maybe say, you know what, religion isn't necessarily a bad thing, but surely each different religion is just expressing some part of the same truth. None of them can see the whole truth. Just each different religion is maybe describing, using different words, different beliefs, but describing essentially the same thing. The same ultimate reality, just using different beliefs to do that. Different paths up the same mountain, maybe people would say. We have a picture of the elephant and the blind man on the screen. This is popular with RE teachers across the world. You may have heard this analogy of the blind man feeling the elephant. And the point of this is they're trying to work out what they're feeling, because they're blind, they can't see. One guy feels the elephant's feet, and he says, well, this thing feels like a kind of tree trunk, maybe. The other blind man puts his hand on the side, and he says, well, it feels like a brick wall. And the other puts his hand on the tail and says, well, it feels like a rope. And of course, they're describing the same thing. They're just using different aspects, different words, to basically describe what is the same thing, the elephant. And so it's said, the analogy is, well, each religion is basically describing the same thing, just using different beliefs, different ideas to describe it, different perspectives on the same ultimate reality. And it sounds, to be fair to that, it sounds really reasonable and humble and inclusive. But when you think about it, that type of idea is actually the opposite, isn't it? Because how do people who say that know that none of the religions have the whole truth, that no religion sees the whole truth? You can't say that, you can't give that analogy unless you yourself see the whole truth. I.e. in this one, unless you see the elephant, you can't give that analogy, can you? In order to say that each religion is just basically the same, different paths up the same mountain, you have to have the whole knowledge yourself. You have to have grasped ultimate reality. The same ultimate reality that you said that none of the religious people hold. To say that all religion is basically the same, it's just describing the same thing, is actually arrogant. It's downplaying any difference in religion. It's just saying that we know what is best, and these poor religious people don't know any better. They're just describing the same thing. That may provoke some questions. Or you may have heard people say, you know what, it's arrogant for people really to try and convince people to their own position. Can't you just let people believe it? So the scholar John Hick, hopefully come up on the screen, he said this. He said, if you become aware there are equally intelligent people in the world who hold different beliefs to you, then it's arrogant of you to try and convince them of your position, or hold your view to be superior. And again, on the kind of outskirts of that, it seems a reasonable thing to say. It seems tolerant, type of thing we want to encourage. It seems reasonable and humble. And yet, as I was thinking about it, I'm not one of the world's most clever people, but there are many people in the world who are very intelligent and who are religious believers and who don't agree with John Hick and what he says there, and who are unlikely to change their views. Isn't John Hick doing the same thing that he said was arrogant? He's insisting that he's right, and he's trying to convince religious people to his position, isn't he? To say that religious people shouldn't impose their kind of exclusive views on other people is doing the same thing. It's people are imposing their views on religious people. Outlawing religion didn't work. Just merely condemning or trying to convince people against religion hasn't worked. And there is another option. We could just kind of privatise religion. We could say basically it's fine, religion's okay, each to their own, you kind of keep it to yourself. Religion is just a kind of personal preference type thing. I support Manchester United. I don't try and convert other people to follow Manchester United. I sometimes do, but we don't normally do that type of thing. If you see my CD collection, which is shamefully filled with Britney Spears and Dolly Parton stuff, you don't try and call me to renounce those things, do you? Maybe you should. But most people don't. I'm married, my wife does call me to renounce them. But that's because that type of thing is personal preference, isn't it? It's just a preference thing. Some people like this type of music, some people like this type of sport. You don't think somebody's wrong because they like badminton if you don't like badminton. Surely religion is just on the category of kind of preference stuff. You just have a preference for something. But the problem is, if my belief is just for me, why isn't yours just for you? If you don't want religious people to kind of talk about their exclusive religious beliefs, you're insisting that they have the same belief as you, aren't you? The idea that there's no absolute truth for everyone is itself a statement of absolute truth. Some people say, look, there's no absolute truth on this type of thing. There's no one truth that fits everybody in all different cultures. Well, that by definition is a statement of absolute truth that is true for everybody. So they say it's inherently contradictory. Now, I'm not just trying to be kind of a bit difficult and provocative. The point is, we all think that our view is right, don't we? Otherwise, we probably wouldn't hold a view that we thought was wrong. That'd be a bit strange. And we all do try and convince other people to our position, whether we're an atheist, an agnostic, a Muslim, a Christian, whatever. The question really is, why do we think those things? What reason do we have for our beliefs? See, the religious beliefs of Christians, it's based on the life of Jesus. Christians are people who follow Jesus, follow Christ. It's probably not news to you. But the problem is, Christians are claiming that Christianity isn't merely just a philosophy or a worldview that kind of works for them. They're not merely claiming it's subjectively true for them. They're claiming it's objectively true. They're claiming that Jesus really lived in history, that he really died in history, and he really did come back to life again. He really did rise again from the grave in history. They're claiming it actually happened, not just it merely kind of works for them. Christianity belongs in the category of truth claims, not merely preference stuff. That's really important. Christians believe that Christianity is true, not merely a philosophy or a worldview that kind of works for them. You see, there is a difference between tolerance and truth. We should always tolerate and respect other people who hold different views to us. Of course we should. And in fact, many people would say that's as a result of a Judeo-Christian background, Judeo-Christian tradition that we have. We should tolerate people's views. But it doesn't mean we think that they're right necessarily. We can think that people are wrong and still tolerate their views. For example, if I think that Cardiff is the capital of England, you should tolerate my view. If I sincerely believe that to be true, you should tolerate my view. You don't have to think it's right. Of course you don't think it's right, it's wrong. But you should tolerate my view. And in fact, actually tolerance probably by definition means you disagree with somebody. If we have the same view, you don't have to tolerate my view. It is your view. You only tolerate someone's view if it's a different view to yourself. We all make exclusive claims. Exclusivity is part of life. Bath University is exclusive. They don't just take anybody here at this university. Truth claims are exclusive by definition because we're excluding all alternatives which are false. Life works like that, and Christianity, it's claimed, is based on a truth claim. It's either true or it's false. It can't just be subjectively true for some people. There are basically four views of the kind of truthfulness of religious beliefs. We can have that on the screen. Four kind of different views. Some people say all religions are right. Other people might say, well, not all religions are right. Maybe some religions are right because there are some wacky religions. Maybe they're not right. Other people would say, well, one religion is right. And some people say, well, no religions are right. Now, when we look at that list, we probably think that the exclusive truth claim is the third one, where we say that one religion is right. But the problem is, they're kind of all exclusive, aren't they? Because if you think that all religions are right, you're disagreeing with people who hold that one and none of the religions are right. If you hold that some of the religions are right, you're disagreeing with people who say that all, one and none of the religions are right, and so on. Whatever your view on religion, you're going to disagree with somebody in the world. You're going to disagree with someone here in this room. If you make a claim which is true or false, by definition, you're excluding all the other options. Everybody holds to exclusive claims when they say that something is either true or not. Whatever we say about religion, we're going to be disagreeing with somebody. What we need to say is, well, what reasons do we have for believing that? We need to ask questions, we need to go to talks like this, we need to do the thinking, we maybe need to read these types of things, we need to read the first century accounts of Jesus' life, particularly tomorrow, I know these guys will plug it later, the question about can we trust the Bible, that is a key question in this. That is definitely something, if you've got questions, you're a bit sceptical, you've got to come to that one and ask your questions. You wouldn't think that someone was arrogant if they said that they had developed the cure for cancer. You wouldn't say that someone was being exclusive and arrogant in saying that. If it were true, you'd want to know if it was true. If Jesus is the cure for our condition as human beings, it actually would be arrogant of Christians to keep that to themselves. That's why Christians want to tell people. They genuinely believe that Jesus is the cure for our condition. How can we, as human beings living on this little planet in the middle of the universe, middle of our universes, how can we come to know anything about God unless He says something to us, unless He makes the first move? And that's why Christians believe that Jesus is the only way. Because Jesus is uniquely come into this world as God Himself, stepping into our world to tell us about God. That is unique in Christianity. They believe that Jesus is uniquely qualified to tell us about God, and that He has uniquely died on the cross to take all our wrong away from us, to die the death that we deserve for all our rejection of God. He has died in our place so that we can come back to know God, and uniquely He has done that. One of the books of the New Testament says this about Jesus. It should come up on the screen. He says, as he's talking about Jesus, "You were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God, from every tribe and language and people and nation, and you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God." This is the offer Jesus makes. Anybody can come to Him. He has died as a ransom to bring us back to God. That's what that means. He has died, He's been slain, so that anybody from any tribe or language or people or nation, any background, can come to Jesus. It's not that you've got to be a certain kind of type of person, you've got to be a certain religious person or a certain moral person or a particularly needy person or somebody who's got their life together or a Westerner. Anybody from any background can come to Jesus, Jesus says. He's died for all types of people from any background, all of us in this room. And that means that the message of Christianity isn't an exclusive one where the only people who get accepted by God are people who have done certain religious deeds. Not at all. Jesus says you can't do certain religious deeds to get right with God. It's solely what Jesus has done for us. All we need to do is accept that, is just to merely receive that, to accept the gift. Christianity is ultimately an inclusive religion. It's a free entry for anybody who'll come. Jesus says He accepts all those who will come to Him. You have to be from a certain background, a certain religious deeds, not at all. Anybody is welcome to Him. And that means that Christians who maybe are arrogant in what they say and who are judgmental, there's no place for that in Christianity. It's the ultimate humbler. Because Christians are not accepted on their good attitude, their good moral deeds, not at all. They're accepted only because of what Jesus has done. And that means it's free entry to everybody in this room.